Hello, everybody. Welcome to a beautiful Saturday with the Big Lebowski. I hope everyone had a awesome week, ended it strong, and now you get a chance to relax. So today we're just going to do a little bit of drawing just to catch up with last night. I was explaining on my X account, formerly known as Twitter, which, by the way, everybody should get a chance to follow me just for some quick updates on how the streams are going to be, if there's any last minute changes, just because I am more active on that social media platform. So by all means, go ahead and drop by, leave any comments, leave any suggestions on what you'd like to see for the drawings. But today it is just going to be off-camera drawing of one of my original characters, actually one of the characters that I use specifically for a campaign that I am currently a part of. If anything, I actually want to provide more of a update on how the campaign is going. So for a few of you that have been with me for a while, which by the way I always appreciated, and I have more seats available for anyone else to join the party, but this is a character that I have. His name is Tildehagan. Go ahead and write his name up here because he is my boy. And so Tildehagan is a half-elf sorcerer in the 5e edition of Dungeons & Dragons, although the game has changed for us slightly, where now we play Pathfinder, and I believe it is the second or third edition of Pathfinder. And so he's actually now an oracle. And so how an oracle class works, for as far as I can understand, an oracle is a type of sorcerer equivalent where you still receive your powers from some greater divine being that also provides you with, depending on your oracle ability, it provides you with powers, but these powers are so strong, in fact, that when you use them, causes your character to have curse-like symptoms. So like for Tilde, he is a time oracle, which very much falls in line with the lore of what we were doing in 5e. So that means that whenever Tilde uses his abilities, he suffers like physical ailments, and because it is of the like the time space continuum kind of a thing, he has certain symptoms physically, like he becomes more feeble. So it appears that he ages. So he's a 20-something-year-old half elf, but of course when he uses his ability, he suddenly looks like he's like 50 or 60. And such is the nature of the oracle. Now, it varies depending on the type of oracle that you are, but of course, because Tilly is a time oracle, or he draws his powers from a time deity, his curses or curse-like symptoms are going to appear as if, it messes with his age. And of course, that means like physically he won't be able to do many things if he uses his powers too long or too many times. Now, for this particular face, I did go ahead and draw my inspiration from just male models, and it was the closest thing I had to what I wanted to portray Tilde as. And then of course I added modifications to like the hair and the ears and other things that were more suited to the character. Alrighty. Go ahead. But otherwise, so where we are right now, we've actually almost concluded all of Tildehagan's backstory in the game. So let me just start from the beginning so I could tell it. So Tildehagan comes from a place known as the Underdark. Specifically, his is a nomadic tribe. And it's nomadic in the way that they don't just move on foot place to place in the Underdark, because the Underdark is famously known for its, all the treacherous animals and the terrain just not being the safest place to traverse. So they travel in style on the back of a large, blind Tarrasque. Now, for a lot of people who aren't familiar with what a Tarrasque is, a Tarrasque is what is known as the world ender, or the game ender, because it is designed to be impossible to destroy. So, like, DMs will pull this out, and a DM is a dungeon master. It's also called a GM as a game master. But the DMs or GMs will famously pull this out when they want a game to end. And, the reasons vary. Like, if you just have a rough group of people that you're playing with, or the campaign has grown stale, or everyone has collectively agreed that, they just want to move on and find a cool way to bring the game to a conclusion, albeit a very unnatural conclusion. This is one way to do it. I mean, the other way is the classic rocks fall and you die. But that's not as bougie as having a Tarrasque break through the crust of the earth to destroy your civilization. Alright, let me just get the outlines done here. But where was I going with this? Oh yes. So Tilde hails from this nomadic people of the Underdark on the back of this Tarrasque. And so how the map is devised is you have a 3-tiered city. So of course on the outer skirts of it, it's think of, if you were to think of the city in Attack on Titan, you know how it's a circular model, and then on the outermost ring you have the poorest people, in the middle, and then the center. So think of it like that, but you only focus on a quarter of it. So very much in a rough triangular shape, where the largest portion, which is at the back of the Tarrasque, nearest to the tail, is the largest, but that is the slums. Now, I say the slums, but realistically, the quality of living on all tiers is not ideal. Because, of course, there's only so much comfort you can get on the back of a moving animal, on a moving world destroyer. But, of course, that's where most of the people live. And then you have the middle section. And this section would be considered like the people who have found more use in the colony. So it's broken up into 4 factions. And the 4 of these factions, it's split up exactly like how you would think of a XY graph, where you have the top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right quarters. And so in the bottom left corner of the map, you have the drug district. And in the drug district, that's where Tilde had spent all of his childhood. Because he was not necessarily born there, but he was definitely raised. And he was raised by a man named Baron Tilde. And this name I created because of an inspiration from some of my favorite real life people, because I believe the name Barent is a name that was brought sometime in Western Europe, if not Eastern Europe, of course, that means bear. And so, of course, Tilde's dad is a bear of a man, and Tilde means I believe it was the child of, or something like that. I've got to brush up on it, but it was actually very cool. And so Baron Tilde, he stumbles upon this tiny half-elf child. It, the circumstances around it are very unknown, but it is a very unsavory place for children, for anyone really to be living. So, contrary to his normal code of ethics, as much ethics as you could have in a place like this, he takes the child in. And he raises this child like his own, and there was never a question, even though they had very little physical similarities between them. Tildy just understood, this is my father, this is my dad. And of course, the same could be said for Baron Tildy, where he would look at this child and be like, this is my son. And so, of course, Tildy grows up in this environment where it's eat or be eaten, and he grows up very hard. And he understands, like, if I'm not securing my place, someone else will take my spot. But of course, he quickly picks up the trade of drug crafting. And he actually learns the difference between, drugs and medicine lies in the dosage. So of course, in this time, he also takes up the studying of using these drugs as poison, as well as medicine, although that would rarely come into use down there. But he always thought it was a very helpful thing. And Baron Tildy, understanding his son's natural gift and proclivity towards the use of, or the creation and use of drugs and the substances, tries to impart some kind of wisdom. So the understanding is Baron Tildy was not raised here. In fact, he was brought down to this particular place through the means of slave trading. And so, of course, I will now go over the other three quadrants of the underground, and it goes as follows. So in the bottom left quadrant is the drug district. Directly opposite of it would be the bottom right quarters, and this was the trafficking section. So of course, this is where all slave trading would happen. And how it would work is they would have select spots on specific continents where they would stop, surface, and then, they would then go into the cities to their local contacts where they would trade. And they would pick up the slaves there in return for what is presumably drugs or other contraband that was created on this mobile city. And so once these slaves were brought back down, they were then either selected or put into the other quadrants to serve, or they were then sold off at the next stop in the trade routes. And so, of course, when Baron Tildy first arrived, he had fought, his circumstance and tried to find a way to leave, which of course was met with pretty severe punishment. So he is a large man with many, many scars. At some point, I will go ahead and draw him out, but today, of course, we are focusing on Tildy, but we will get a chance to explore that character's background as well. And so, with that being said, Baron Tildy eventually decides, he's going to try to make the most of his situation and where he is at the moment. All the while, he doesn't necessarily give up the hope of leaving his circumstance and returning to the surface, but as days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, and he becomes more and more accustomed to this world of darkness and this world of despair and evil, he starts to lose that hope that he would ever resurface. He starts to find himself becoming more and more like the thing he despises. which is just everything and the people around him. So, of course, when he picks up Tilde, it's like that sense of hope renews. It's like that sense of, I need to be better and I need to leave this situation for my son. Then, of course, he has to bide his time because he needs to plan out and find resources and figure out a way so that both he and his son can leave. And so, of course, all the while, he doesn't share this with Tilde, at least not right away, because he does want to make sure that he has everything in place before he springs his plan. And so, of course, the years go on, Tilde grows up, he eventually has someone who becomes very important to him, and her name is Juliet. And the nickname that he gives to her is Jet, which isn't very original, but hey, when you're young and in love, I suppose things like that don't really matter so much. But Tilde on his own starts to talk about leaving. He starts to talk about, what if we could find a way to get out of here? What if you and I were to leave this place and run away? And the talk of young lovers wanting to better their lives or get out of the shitty situation that they're in. And so, of course, they plot while smoking contraband and all these other things, and all the while, Tilde doesn't know that his dad is plotting a way for them to actually get out. Now, the biggest turning point in all of this is when Tilde, who at this point is wanting to make a name for himself. Like, he understands he's very good at what he does. He's very pivotal to the operations of the drug trade, and he wants to do something. But what ends up happening is he ends up coming in contact with some of the worst people you could ever come into contact with. And so this lies in the upper half of this 4 quadrants. So the top left half would be the quarters of the mercenaries. And so all of the hitmen, all of the killers for hire, they live here. And so how it works is they are the quote-unquote enforcers for the underground, because their leader is actually the right-hand person to essentially the underground big bad in the area. So anything that has to be enforced falls upon the mercenaries. And then in the top right corner has... Sorry, I'm just checking the work here. Has what is known as the rumor mill, or the information house. And so everything there is to know about networking, everything there is to know about specific individuals or political political rivalries or any secrets in government, that falls to this specific place. And one thing that would be revealed eventually, when I tell it later with our current campaign, is one of the best story plots I could have ever had happen and revealed in the entire campaign. And so, of course, Tilde wanting to prove himself and show, like, hey, I have the ambition to be someone of note, someone of great import. He tries to start up a little ring of something. So it's him and a few of his friends, or a few of the boys who are also wanting to be like, hey, we want to be a part of something. And so he ends up crossing the wrong person and this person has higher ties than he does, of course. And the friends that he was supposedly going into this with, they betray him. They actually provide information to bring about Tilde's downfall. And so, of course, Tilde, not knowing this, still goes ahead and he follows through with the plan, thinking that he's gotten a good understanding of the people that he's working with, but of course he does not. And so it ends up falling back onto him, and because it becomes something so major, or that it's been rumored to be something really major, Tilde needs to be brought before Ezaid. And now Ezaid is the big bad in this mobile Tarask city. And so Ezaid, of course, is not pleased with what he hears, especially because of who Tilde is. He is the son of Baron Tilde, and Baron Tilde has been problematic for him. Everything from maybe small uprisings, little rumors, just things that would make it, difficult for normal operations to continue. And with the suspicion that, Baron Tilde had been trying to plot an escape, Ezaid sees this as the perfect time to step in and to squash everything, as well as to reaffirm, his power. Because every time someone goes against Ezaid uses that as publicity to continue to create a legend for himself, or he creates, more of that fear that people have about him. So everything in there is built for Ezaid's ruling. Everything that is there is created just to make sure that Ezaid always stays in power, and that he's always the most powerful in both name and show of force. And so, of course, when Tilde is brought before them and Baron Tilde gets wind of this, he's at a loss, because literally in the next few days he was going to enact his plan to have his son taken to the surface, and he was also going to go, and if they could, they would have brought Tilde's then girlfriend. But of course, this puts such a huge wrench into everything, and so Baron Tilde makes an appearance at the court of Ezaid, and as they're about to lay down the sentence for him, Baron Tilde makes an appeal, and he appeals to Ezaid to have the target of the punishment be changed, and that he then, understanding the nature of Ezaid and how callous this man is, he lies. He lies and says that he was the reason that his son had this plan, and that it was originally his idea for Tilde to go and retrieve this thing because he needed it for an uprising he was wanting to start. And Tilde hears this and is immediately like, what is happening? And Baron Tilde glares at him, and it's the knowing glare of you shut your mouth, what I say goes. And Tilde, in anguish, stares up at his father, knowing that his actions would be the reason today that his father would die. And so, of course, Tilde is able to get out from the grip of the guards holding him and runs to his father. And in a show of emotion and in a show of weakness that Tilde otherwise never would have given to any of the people here, he embraces his father. And he silently weeps. No one knows if there were tears drawn from the masses that day, because this was a place that did not look too kindly upon shows of emotion. Everyone always saw it as weakness, as unnecessary displays that would give your enemy the upper hand. But Tilde understood, if he did not do this, there may never be another chance for him to. And as they embrace, Tilde hears his father speak very softly to him and say, a short clip of words, and Tilde's eyes widen, and the hurt increases. But he closes his eyes, he nods, he releases him, and in mere instants, right before Tilde's eyes, his dad goes up in flames. And Tilde, hearing the sound of the fire crackling and watching as those kind eyes that took him in all those years ago look at him with nothing but love and sadness as they are then engulfed in flames. But of course, knowing the kind of man that his father was, he understood his father would never make a sound. He would never cry out, even through all of that immense pain. And Tilde puts his father's plan into action, and he goes. So he runs back to their home. He collects the scattering of newspapers and articles that have been lying around on his father's desk. He picks up the little parcel and swears that the parcel moves just a little bit, but then doesn't notice it in his rush to get everything done, because he knows, even though Ise did agree to have Baron Tilde bear the weight of his sins, it would not be long until he comes after Tilde, because he's not a man of his word. He would do whatever would benefit him in the long run, and having Tilde there would not be a beneficial thing. So Tilde marks the time, he marks the hours best as he can. It's really hard to tell time when you live underground. And he waits. And he waits. And at the moment that he senses a slowing down in the giant lumbering monster's pace, he moves. He contemplates stopping by Juliet's house to speak with her, to kiss her one last time, to hold her hand, to tell her he would be back, but he doesn't. Instead, he runs. He runs to the very end of the Tarrasque. And in the normal inspection and movements of everybody from the trafficking quarters, he jumps. The landing is not smooth, but he lands. And so begins his long journey to the tunnel that would exit out into the above ground. And of course, when Tilde first exits, it's nighttime. So to him, it's just a brighter darkness than what he's accustomed to. But nonetheless, it is the most beautiful sight he has ever laid eyes on. Because there's these little twinkling things in the sky that look similarly to all of the glowing stones that he would mark in the Tarask's journey. But somehow these feel like larger than life lights that look at him and breathe and live and burn. He doesn't understand, but he knows that he should not waste this opportunity that his father had given his life for. And so he starts to make his way, using the articles and the newspapers that his father had been collecting over the last few months. He makes his way to a little town called Nerio. And here, he would try to make something for himself. And of course, once he's there, he notices the little package. It moves again. And so, being very curious and a little apprehensive at what his father could have left him, he opens it. And in the little pocket of the newspaper, he sees this tiny silver mouse. And of course, he's immediately taken to the mouse because it's so cute, so small, and so feeble, just like how he feels in this moment. And he picks up the little mouse and he names him Beaumont. And under the starry night, he would make a pact with this little mouse that they would both start anew above ground in hopes of one day returning to collect Juliet and hopefully exacting revenge on Izaid for taking his father from him. And of course, when Tilde arrives to Nerio, all he knows to do is be someone who creates drugs, who cooks, and he tells himself, I'm only gonna do this so I can get back on my feet, and once I have enough, I'll quit, I'll change. But a year goes by, and he started to create a connection there where he is the main person who exports drugs, who creates these things that he has seen destroy the lives of so many. And he always tells himself, just a little bit longer, just a little bit more. Then I'll leave. Then I'll stop. But of course, it's a very hard thing for him. But yeah, so that's kind of the backstory of Tilde. And of course, he meets up with a lot of the people who would end up becoming some of his best friends, his companions, and the closest people that he'll ever have, aside from the connections that he had when he was underground. I really like the way the line work turned out, especially when you add a darker border around the art. It really makes everything else pop in. But of course, I will add tears in a second. Let's go ahead and give him some pupils. And so after Tilde meets his companions and they have a little bit of an adventure in one of the surrounding kingdoms, they return to the underground Tarask. Because Tilde does find out that it's back in the neighborhood. And now that he has people that he can trust, he wants to exact his revenge. And so the plan was to return the first time when they were there and to absolutely wreck shop. But when they get down there, they find that things have been, of course, a little more complicated than they think. And by that, he means that things are a little bit different. Sure, there are some things that are very similar to how he remembers them being, but there's so much that's changed. Honestly, when you do the line work really cleanly, it just makes highlighting all of this so much easier. Big time saver. Okay, and then we go with the brush or the marquee tool, and we just clean up. And so when they go down into the Underdark, what ends up happening is they run into issues with, trying to find a way into the palace. Because how it works is once they get out of the slums and into the little midsection, where all of the quarters of debauchery and all that other junk is. So like the drug district, the mercenary quarters, the trafficking quarters, and then the intel, the rumor mill intel spot. They find out really quickly that the only way to get to Izaid's place would be to receive a written statement from one of the generals, one of the 4 sections, saying that they were allowed entry into the palace. So like a formal writ stating that they were allowed to be there. And so what ends up happening is our team goes on one of the wildest adventures of starting crazy rumors and poisoning generals and turning people against each other. Because what we end up finding out is the leader of the traffickers, she is a heavy drug user because she's very dissatisfied with how things are in her station in life. Like, she actually wants to be the person who is in charge of the mercenary quarters. And so because of this and her dissatisfaction, she takes it out on everybody in her own section. So no one likes her because she's kind of awful. And we use that to our advantage. So what we also find out is that she does have a specific person who makes her drugs for her, just so that they are, clean, no one's messed with them. And what we end up doing is we find out the specific kind of drug that she uses, which is called the succubus kiss. And the succubus kiss is a kind of ecstasy. It's also a kind of LSD that causes, it's a hallucinogen. But how it works is it is a drug that is imbued with a contract for a succubus. And what ends up happening, of course, is, you take it and then you're filled with feelings of immense euphoria. And so what we end up doing is we take the place of the couriers who normally take the drugs from this spot to the boss lady. That's not what I wanted to do. But what we do is we infiltrate the middlemen, we receive it. What Tilde does with his knowledge of poisons and, drug use, he makes a contact poison. And a contact poison is just a cool way of saying, like, if you touch it and then you ingest something, or you lick your fingers or anything like that, you become poisoned. And Tilde puts it onto the lid of the box. Then what they do is they go and give this box to the original couriers, and then the original couriers will go ahead and take it to the leader. And of course, then we dip out and we go over to where the rumors are, or the rumor mill, and that is going to be in the top right section. And we wait it out and we see what happens. And sure enough, soon after we commence this plot, we hear word that the leader has fallen into a coma. And so, we start running rumors about who did it and what happened. And what we say is we pin the blame onto her personal drug maker, but in large part we pin it on the leader of the drug empire, or the drug quarters. And so begins our silent war with the underground. So what's really cool about it is we had such good roles the whole time, and we had really good conversations with everybody, that eventually we were able to get just about everything we needed done. We eventually had to get into a run-in with the leader of the informants, and this by far had to be my favorite interaction, because we provide some really juicy information, or we hint at knowing something that no one else would possibly know. Just a moment here, we create the flats, and it's just easy work after that. Like, we're able to convince one of the main informants to let us see the head of the informants, because at this point we still need a writ to get into the actual palace section of it, and so we're allowed to see the main guy, but of course he makes us sit in a waiting room for like 2 hours, and just as we're about to get up and leave, the original informant tells us, we're able to go see him. And I kid you not, we open this door and the GM's like, and sitting in front of you is, the head of the informant, and he's smoking flyleaf, which is the equivalent of cannabis in this world. And the rumors were originally that the head of the informant district doesn't imbibe. He doesn't do drugs. And so of course Tilde makes this exclamation. He goes, "I thought you didn't do drugs." And the leader takes a deep puff of his flyleaf and says, "Oh, flyleaf isn't a drug." It's definitely not considered a drug here. And we look into the face of Snoop Dogg. We look at Snoop Dogg in this room and we literally laugh. And of course, the GM, he starts playing Gin and Juice in the background. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we actually were able to pull in Snoop Dogg into into our world. And it was the best reveal ever. And then of course, we try to strike a deal with him, and we're saying like, oh, we have information, we have reason to believe, we know who actually did it. And he pulls an Uno reverse card, and he's like, well, how can I trust you? Because no one knows who you are. Which is a very fair statement, and one that no one else was able to catch on us, because we're new. But we've been panning ourselves off as like, oh yeah, we've been here. We know Mike. We know Josh. Like, yeah, et cetera, et cetera. And so he starts to catch on that maybe we're not who we say we are. Which, of course, is cause for concern. But somehow we're able to convince him that, like, we're good. that we are, in fact, okay. And what he does is he says, I will give you a writ if you're able to do something for me. And so, of course, we're like, okay, we'll do it depending on what it is. He tells us what it is. Then we go ahead and we do it. But of course, you know, they do the double cross thing where we come back and he's like, oh, you actually did it, but this time I'll only give you the writ if you do this other thing. And he was asking us essentially to remove the competition. Like, he was wanting us to go and take out the other heads so that he would eventually come in and take over. So at this point in time, we had put the trafficking lord into a coma. We then incited everyone to investigate the drug lord, you know, for his role in everything, and we were actually able to convict him of it, or we planted all the evidence needed to make sure that he would actually get convicted. So Snoop Dogg was asking us to get rid of the mercenary head, and we were trying to find a way to not do that, but he said, you know, you either listen or else. But at this point in time, things were getting so chaotic in the underground, just with all the turmoil we were causing. So we say to him that we will, but we leave and we go and try to find a way to get a writ another way. So we definitely suggest to go back to the comatose leader and we revive this person. And once we revive this person, we tell this leader to call for us at your tavern. So we come back, we are able to convince the leader that yes, you know, we're tired of the drug lord's shenanigans and we want to take over, and that once we take over, we can build an alliance with this out of comatose leader, so that she can eventually move up to becoming the mercenary leader, because the two of us will be in on it together and we'll fight the mercenary leaders. Essentially, we lie to them and say like, hey, we got your back. All we need from you is a writ to go and talk to Izaid, which again is the big bad in this area, and we'll tell him that, you know, we want to replace Draxus because we think we're more capable. But of course, once we get the writ, like at this point, the mercenary leader has apprehended the drug lord. And so the mercenary leader, of course, because as I mentioned earlier, all of the mercenaries, they fall under the quote unquote, like they're the guard under here. So, you know, whatever they do, they maintain whatever semblance of peace and order is down in this lawless land. So they've apprehended Draxus, which is the name of the drug lord, because I'm tired of calling them drug lord and all these other things. So they apprehend Draxus, and Silvara is the mercenary leader. So they head up to where Izaid is. Now, because of this, you know, we go and we use our writ at the door and we're able to get in. And once we're in, we see for two of our members, for the first time, they're watching the execution of someone who's betrayed Izaid. But for Tilde, this would be the second time that he's witnessing this. And so, of course, he watches as Draxus performs a very, very unfair trial for this Draxus. And Draxus is trying to tell him, you know, I would never, I didn't do it, it's not me, they're lying. And of course, Izaid doesn't care about the truth. All he cares about is, you know, someone is trying to change the order of things, and this is just another opportunity for me to lay down the law. And then, of course, you know, chaos ensues. He ends up burning this person, like, out of existence. and it's so gruesome. And for Tilde, this is awful because it's so fresh in his mind what happened, witnessing this all over again. But he doesn't make a sound, doesn't do anything, at least not yet, because it's not the time. But of course, you know, he can't help but think about those days and everything that had happened. So once that happens, you know, our little group we're taken aback because we don't know if we should still do the thing or do what we've been asked to do. This is also because with the way things are going, no one in the drug district is safe, because as soon as we exit, we notice that there's been a lineup of mercenary soldiers to contain the chaos that's happening in the drug district. And in the drug district, all-out war ensues between the little pocket factions that were naturally there. And so everyone is vying for their position as the new leader in the drug district, because everyone wants to be, you know, head honcho here, because your situation dramatically changes. Like, you just get a little bit more. But of course, you know, we've got to go back there because when they had first arrived, and the only person that they could go to make the contact poison that Tilde put onto the box was at Tilde's former girlfriend's house, which made things incredibly awkward and incredibly tense. Because if you remember from the story, Tilde left without saying goodbye. He left without giving Juliet any kind of word or hint as to what, you know, what he was going to do or where he was going and for how long, and, you know, all of these unanswered questions that if you were someone's significant other and that person just disappeared off the face of the earth, you know, it'd be a little wild to see this person again. But of course, you know, Tilde being a different person from who he was when he left, they do stop by and they do try to get her. Because what ends up happening is, of course, when Tilde does confront her and they do talk, he does explain what happens, but Juliet is torn. Juliet is at her wit's end. Like, for all she knew, Tilde just abandoned her in this place after all the talk that they had, you know, of we're going to leave together, we're going to start a new life, you know, all these things. You know, it's pretty awful, the situation that they're in. But of course, you know, it's hard on Juliet, and he's not going to abandon her this time around. Also, I made a quick note with the DM on the side that, like, Tilde had written her a letter and he was intending to leave it, but of course, because he didn't stop by her house before he left, he was never able to deliver a letter to her. And in this letter, it would describe very briefly why he was needing to leave, and that he would be back for her, and that in the end of it, he would tell her that he loved her. Which is like the equivalent of having a long-term relationship, never hearing I love you from this person, and then to finally hear those words over a text message. So, not the best reputation for Tilde, not the best look. I'm not even gonna lie to you, even I was a little torn on this, but I thought it would add good drama and flavor to the story and narrative as a whole, and my GM agreed. But what ends up happening is she reads this and she just goes on a bender to try to drown out her unresolved emotions. And so because of that, when they go to her, she is dazed and confused because all around her are the sounds of fire and bombs and people dying and shouts and screams. And in her drug-addled mind, she is so frightened she doesn't know what to do. So of course, when we come to rescue her, you know, we come in guns a-blazing and all these other things, but the plan has changed. While we're also in the drug district, I ask our group to stop by Draxus's house to see if we could glean any useful information while we're there. But while we're there, we don't necessarily find anything useful aside from things that we've already discovered, such as ledgers with names of people and cities we've been to, just so we could crack down on the slavery problem. But we find out that Draxus had a son, which definitely put a damper into our entire plan, because we did not expect for there to be a child at that moment in time. But then we don't leave the kid. We actually take the kid with us. And that makes things so complicated. Because now we have to deal with that. But of course, you know, we're the good guys. We're not just gonna leave this kid over here to die. So now we have 2 civilians, and that means that we actually cannot we can't stay to enact Tilde's revenge, because we have 2 civilians that have nothing to do with what's going on who are there now. And so of course, you know, we all make the decision to leave and come back another day when we are a little more prepared for what's going to happen. And then of course our GM also lets us know, like, hey, if you guys leave and come back, things will be so different from how you left them. So of course we're like, all right, that's something that's a risk we're willing to take, because we have civilians. Like, it's not going to go well if we go into this fight with them. So of course we exit Tarask and we make our way back to Nerio. And I thought this was probably one of the more more HBO drama parts of the series, but Tilde has a new love interest in this game, and it's one of his companion's sister. So it's a little awkward when they roll up and Tilde has his ex in tow, and they enter the establishment of his companion, and he sees his current love interest there. And let me tell you, the drama is to die for. It's so good. But yeah, so I thought that was a very good touch in part of the DM. Let me just get this to move over a little bit. So this is something that I actually do pretty often. Like, if I don't like the way something looks, I'm gonna move it over, just to have it, yeah, just look a little bit better, so they don't look like dead fish eyes. You know what I mean? But anyways, so Tilde has a quick moment with the sister, because his companion's name is Yuta, and Yuta's sister is who Tilde currently has a love interest in. But he tells the sister, whose name is, funnily enough, Jax, and it's Jax, he speaks with Jax really quickly just to let her know what's going on. And he said, you know, she's not someone else. You know, she's not someone else that I have my eye on. That it basically, Jax is the only person that Tilde has feelings for. And that the reason that, you know, he has this other woman in tow is because that is an old friend of his who needs help. And he can't just leave her, you know, how she is. So, of course, you know, he repairs that bridge very quickly. But he did notice that there was a look of jealousy, you know, that it was good for him to know that, like, she likes him too. And so it was just a really nice thing. And it was so funny because as I was doing this, my friend who plays Tilde's companion was like, stay away from my sister. So it's super funny to hear. But anyways, this handsome face is a heartbreaker for sure. Alright, let's go ahead and start adding the shading. Actually, no, let me get rid of that layer, and I'm gonna duplicate. Shading. And I spelled that wrong, but that's okay. Okay, and of course, for the shading, what we want to do is we're going to delete all of that. We're going to turn this off. I'm actually going to make the paper white again. Ooh, so bright. And for the shading, I'm just going to go ahead and use the soft brush once again. Because, of course, what we're going to do is we're going to select everything. Sick. Okay. We go ahead and we paint in this handsome face. Actually, let me start with his like real face. Okay, but what was I saying? Oh yeah, so they're able to figure out what to do with the boy. They end up taking Juliet with them to the bigger city so she can go into rehab so that she could clean herself up from the drugs. And Tilde tries to make it clear to her that, you know, he still loves her as a friend because they go way back, but he no longer has feelings for her. But I don't think, I've been told by the GM that this character did not get that message. So definitely a conversation that has to be addressed once again in the future for more awkward enjoyment. But anyways, they return. They return to the big city and they talk to the king. They talk to the king of Belladonna. And Belladonna is pretty much like our stronghold, our main place at this moment. Also because Yuta, my companion, or Tilde's companion, is the battle master of the occasion. Not the occasion, of the city. And that just means that she's in charge of the troops, and if the king should need her, you know, she has to be there for essentially that reason. Okay. Okay. Awesome. And then of course, but yes, so they return to the king, they explain what's happening, And of course, you know, they tell the king, hey, we have to stop this because this is something that concerns both our human realm as well as the entire continent. So what they have to do is they have to gather the assistance of the Dwarven Empire, which is in the complete opposite end and corner from where the human civilization is. Now, some history here. So the dwarves and the humans, like centuries ago, had this huge war that broke out between them over something or other, and the humans had taken a very, very important set of stones called the Ioun stones from the dwarves. And because of that, there's some pretty bad blood there, obviously. And so we use the Ioun stones as a bargaining chip with the dwarves to gather their cooperation in this. But of course, you know, nothing can ever be so easy. So we have to convince the dwarves to reopen or consider opening trade with the human cities once again. And to help out with stopping the Tarask that will be coming through their tunnels very shortly. And so, of course, you know, it's now up to us to go ahead and go through to go ahead and help us with the Tarask that'll be coming through their place, as well as to open up trade once more. Now, we're able to do that very successfully, although there was a point in time where we were like, man, we should just do this without them. But we're able to get their help with this particular thing. And sorry, I'm getting distracted because I'm trying to make sure that I get the blending right. But yeah, so we're able to get helps from the dwarves. So once we return to the Tarask, like, it is an all-out war. Like, so much has changed from the short time that we've been gone. But we lay siege to them, we fight with their generals, like, and then we end up fighting with the Zaid. And it would be one of the hardest battles that would ensue. Alright, I'll fix that shadow on the face when I get the chance. But I am going to go ahead and call it here for today. Thank you so much to everybody who was here watching. I hope you guys were able to enjoy a little bit of storytelling today, as well as watching this come together. Oh yeah, there we go. That looks a little bit better. But I plan on picking this up as well as the rest of our story on Monday, for Makeshift Monday. So by all means, go ahead and pop on by. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you guys have about the lore or about the mechanics of Pathfinder to the best of my knowledge. Otherwise, I hope you guys have an awesome weekend, and you guys please take care.